Long before Ethan Caldwell spoke a single word in my courtroom, I knew this case would be different. The speeding charge itself wasn't unusual. Neither was the report that he'd blasted through a marked school zone at nearly 3 times the posted limit. Unfortunately, reckless drivers appeared before me every week. What caught my attention was everything surrounding the case. The young man who entered that morning carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never truly heard the word no. His tailored jacket probably cost more than some families spent on rent. His attention remained fixed on his phone while everyone else in the courtroom waited for proceedings to begin. And most importantly, he was the son of the city's most powerful politician. That combination rarely ended well. The courtroom doors closed behind him at exactly 9 o'clock. Years on the bench teach you how to read people quickly. Some arrive nervous, some arrive ashamed, some arrive determined to explain themselves. Ethan arrived irritated, not worried, not apologetic, irritated, as though appearing before a judge was an inconvenience interrupting a much more important day. When the clerk instructed everyone to rise, every person in the room stood immediately, everyone except Ethan. He remained seated, scrolling through messages. The bailiff stepped closer. Sir, only then did Ethan glance up. With exaggerated slowness, he rose to his feet and sighed dramatically. His attorney stood beside him, already preparing the familiar defense I had heard countless times before. The clerk read the charges. Excessive speed in an active school zone, failure to obey traffic control signals. Ethan barely reacted. I studied him for a moment. Mr. Caldwell, I began, according to the report, you were traveling 72 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour school zone during morning drop-off. He shrugged. Technically, a few people in the gallery exchanged shocked looks. Technically, I repeated. I was late for an important meeting, he replied. Traffic was backed up everywhere. His tone suggested this explanation settled the matter. It didn't, and that justified driving through a school zone at that speed. He laughed softly. My father was waiting. Hundreds of jobs depend on his schedule. I wasn't exactly joyriding. The room fell silent. Some defendants make mistakes. Others reveal exactly who they are. Ethan belonged to the second category. I folded my hands. So your position is that your time was more valuable than the safety of children crossing the street? His smile faded slightly. That's not what I said, but it is what you implied. For the first time, he seemed uncomfortable. His attorney quickly stepped forward. Your Honor, my client understands the seriousness of the allegation and is prepared to resolve this matter with an appropriate fine. A fine, of course, because people like Ethan often viewed consequences as products available for purchase. What neither of them knew was that this case contained details far more troubling than a speeding ticket. And waiting in a sealed evidence folder on my desk was information that would change the entire direction of the hearing. Before the morning ended, one powerful family would discover that influence can open many doors, but it cannot always close them. The clerk handed me the folder. As I opened it, I noticed Ethan's confidence begin to crack for the very first time, and what I found inside would explain exactly why. The evidence folder doesn't contain just one traffic violation. It contains proof that someone inside city government has been quietly erasing Ethan Caldwell's mistakes for years. The moment I opened the evidence folder, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. Most traffic cases involve radar readings, officer statements, and maybe a few photographs. This folder was different, much different. The stack of documents inside was nearly 2 inches thick. Ethan Caldwell noticed it immediately. His casual expression faded. His attorney noticed it too. Unlike his client, he looked genuinely concerned. I removed the first document and adjusted my glasses. Interesting. The attorney cleared his throat. Your Honor? I ignored the question and continued reading. The first report detailed a speeding violation from 7 months earlier, dismissed. The second involved reckless lane changes that had nearly caused a collision downtown. Dismissed. The third concerned parking violations in a restricted emergency access zone. Dismissed. The fourth caught my attention even more: failure to stop after a minor traffic accident. Also dismissed. I looked up. Mr. Caldwell, do you consider yourself an unlucky driver? His face tightened. I don't know what that has to do with this case. Perhaps everything. The room grew quiet. I held up the documents. These records show 4 separate traffic incidents in the last 18 months, yet somehow none resulted in meaningful penalties. His attorney stepped forward quickly. Your Honor, previous matters are irrelevant to today's hearing. Ordinarily, I might agree. I pulled another sheet from the file. But this isn't ordinary. The attorney froze because he recognized the document, an internal city memorandum. Someone had highlighted several lines in yellow. Case review requested, administrative reconsideration approved, closest file immediately. Each request had been authorized by the same office, the Office of the City Manager, a department directly supervised by Ethan's father. A murmur spread through the gallery. Ethan shifted in his seat. For the first time all morning, he wasn't looking bored. He was looking nervous. Where did you get those? He asked. The question slipped out before his attorney could stop him. I raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting concern. Most innocent people ask whether the documents are accurate. His lawyer closed his eyes briefly. Ethan had just made another mistake. Officer Rebecca Torres, the arresting officer, was called to the stand. Unlike many witnesses, she appeared completely unfazed by the attention. She took the oath and sat down. Officer Torres, I said, please describe your interaction with the defendant. She nodded. When I initiated the traffic stop, the defendant refused to provide his license for approximately 3 minutes. Ethan rolled his eyes. Torres continued. He repeatedly asked if I knew who he was. The courtroom remained silent, and when I informed him that it wouldn't affect the citation, she glanced toward Ethan. He told me I'd regret writing the ticket. The gallery erupted into whispers. His attorney immediately stood. Objection overruled. Officer Torres wasn't finished. He then made a phone call while I was still standing beside the vehicle. I leaned forward. To whom? The speakerphone activated briefly. The caller ID displayed the name Dad. Ethan stared at the floor. Several reporters sitting in the back began writing furiously. The attorney's face had turned pale. This hearing was spiraling out of control, but the biggest surprise was still waiting. A court clerk quietly approached my bench and handed me a sealed envelope that had arrived only minutes earlier. No return address, no sender information, just one sentence written across the front for the judge only. I opened it carefully. Inside was a flash drive. Attached to it was a note, 3 words, watch the footage. I looked toward the clerk. Can the courtroom monitor display video evidence? Yes, Your Honor. The attorney immediately objected. We have not reviewed any such evidence. Neither have I. I turned the flash drive over in my hand. Then I looked directly at Ethan. For the first time that morning, real fear appeared in his eyes. Because somehow, before the video had even been played, he already seemed to know exactly what it contained. And whatever was on that drive had him terrified. The mysterious footage reveals that Ethan's speeding incident wasn't the worst thing that happened that morning, and someone in city government has been helping cover it up. The courtroom monitor flickered to life. Nobody spoke. The reporter stopped typing. Even the bailiff leaned forward slightly. Whatever was on that flash drive had suddenly become the center of everyone's attention. I inserted the drive and opened the only video file it contained. The timestamp appeared in the corner, 8:17 a.m. The same morning Ethan Caldwell had been stopped. The footage came from a nearby security camera mounted outside a pharmacy located less than a block from the school zone. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Cars passed. Parents walked children toward the school entrance. Then a black luxury SUV appeared on screen. Officer Torres immediately recognized it. So that's his vehicle? I asked. Yes, Your Honor. The video can. The SUV accelerated far faster than any vehicle should be moving near a school. Several people in the gallery gasped, but the speed wasn't the shocking part. A young boy riding a bicycle entered a crosswalk. The SUV never stopped. The child jerked backward just in time. His bicycle tipped over. The front bumper missed him by inches. The courtroom fell completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The video ended. I looked toward Ethan. His face had gone white. Mr. Caldwell, I said calmly, would you care to explain why this incident wasn't included in the original report? His attorney jumped to his feet. We need time to review. Sit down, counselor. He sat not because he wanted to, because he knew how bad this looked. Officer Torres looked genuinely confused. I never saw this footage before. That statement immediately caught my attention. You never received it? No, Your Honor. I turned toward the prosecution. The prosecutor appeared equally surprised. We were never provided this evidence. A dangerous silence settled over the room. Evidence involving a near collision with a child doesn't simply disappear. Someone had kept it hidden. The question was who? I reviewed the note attached to the flash drive. There was additional information written on the back, 3 names, 2 dates, and 1 office location, the City Transportation Department. Interesting, very interesting. I handed the note to the prosecutor. His eyes widened instantly. What is it? I asked. He hesitated, then answered, these are the names of employees responsible for processing traffic camera evidence. The room erupted into whispers. I struck the bench once, order returned, barely. Ethan looked increasingly uncomfortable. His confidence had completely vanished. The young man who entered the courtroom believing this was a minor inconvenience now looked like someone standing on thin ice. Then something unexpected happened. A voice came from the back row. Your Honor. Everyone turned. A woman stood slowly, mid-50s, professional appearance, nervous expression. I recognized her immediately. Margaret Ellis, former Deputy Director of Transportation. She had retired 6 months earlier. Do you wish to address the court? I asked. She nodded, under oath. Within minutes, she was seated in the witness box. The room watched in complete silence. She swallowed hard, then spoke. I know why that footage disappeared. You could have heard a pin drop. Her hands trembled slightly. For 2 years, she continued, certain cases received special handling. The phrase hit the room like a thunderclap. Special handling. The exact wording that appeared throughout Ethan's dismissed records. The prosecutor leaned forward. Who authorized it? Margaret closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked directly toward Ethan, then toward the gallery entrance, the same entrance where several city officials had quietly gathered during the hearing. Finally, she answered. The orders came from people who believed some families were too important to face consequences. The gallery exploded with reactions. Reporters rushed to record every word. Ethan's attorney buried his face in his hands, but Margaret wasn't finished. There was a list. My attention sharpened immediately. A list? She nodded. A confidential list of protected individuals. Traffic citations, code violations, permit issues. Certain names were flagged before penalties could be issued. The prosecutor stood. Do you have proof? Margaret reached into her briefcase. The entire courtroom froze. She removed a thin folder, then placed it on the witness stand. I made copies before I retired. For the first time all day, Ethan looked genuinely terrified. Because if that folder contained what Margaret claimed it did, this case was no longer about a speeding ticket. It was about organized corruption. And somewhere inside that folder was a name everyone expected to see. The question was whether Ethan Caldwell's father was at the top of the list. I opened the folder. The first page appeared, and the courtroom gasped. The secret protection list names dozens of influential people, but the very first name on the document sends shockwaves through the courtroom and puts the mayor himself in immediate danger. The first page landed on my desk with a soft thud, yet the impact it created in that courtroom felt like an earthquake. I looked down. At the top of the document was a heading: Priority Review List. Restricted access below it were names, business owners, developers, political donors, several city officials. Every entry carried notes beside it. Expedite, dismiss if possible. Refer for administrative review. The system wasn't broken. It had been designed this way. The courtroom waited. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Wu's name appeared first. I scanned the page. Then I looked up slowly. The reaction on my face must have said everything, because the room instantly fell silent. Your Honor? The prosecutor asked. I turned the document so it faced him. His eyes widened. For several seconds he couldn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely above a whisper. My God. Reporters practically leaped from their seats. The prosecutor cleared his throat. The first protected individual on this list is not Ethan Caldwell. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. If not Ethan, then who? I answered myself. The first name belongs to Mayor Richard Caldwell. The gallery erupted. People stood. Reporters rushed toward the aisle. The bailiff repeatedly ordered everyone to sit down. Even Ethan looked stunned. Apparently, he had expected his own name, not his father's. The prosecutor examined additional pages. The evidence became worse with every document. Dozens of cases, dozens of favors, traffic citations erased, building inspections delayed, municipal penalties quietly withdrawn, years of preferential treatment hidden behind official language and administrative procedures. Then we reached the final page, and that page changed everything. Attached to it was a signed authorization memo, not a copy, an original, bearing an unmistakable signature. Mayor Richard Caldwell. The courtroom exploded again. There was no denying it now. No bureaucratic misunderstanding. No missing paperwork. No convenient excuse. The signature connected the mayor directly to the operation. Then suddenly the courtroom doors opened. Every head turned. Mayor Caldwell had arrived. Unlike the confident public figure seen on campaign posters, the man who entered looked exhausted. Someone had clearly informed him about the hearing, and judging by his expression, he already knew things had gone terribly wrong. His eyes immediately found the folder on my desk. Then they found Margaret Ellis. The color drained from his face. He understood the secret was out. Ethan, he said quietly. His son stood. Dad. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The room watched what felt less like a political scandal and more like the collapse of an entire family. The mayor approached cautiously. His attorney followed close behind. Your Honor, the attorney began. My client requests an opportunity to respond. I folded my hands. He may do so under oath. The attorney froze. That wasn't what he wanted. An unsworn statement could be managed. An oath was different, because lying under oath carried consequences, real consequences. Mayor Caldwell stared at me, then at the evidence, then at his son. Finally, he nodded. I'll testify. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Even the reporters looked surprised. Within minutes, he was sworn in. The prosecutor approached. Mr. Mayor, did you authorize preferential treatment for members of this list? The mayor remained silent. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Then he spoke. Yes. The room erupted louder than at any point that day. The confession hung in the air like thunder. Ethan stared at his father in disbelief. Apparently, this was the first truthful answer he'd heard from him in years. The prosecutor continued. Why? The mayor lowered his head. His voice sounded older now, tired, defeated. Because it started small. The courtroom listened. One favor became another. One request became 10. Eventually, I convinced myself I was helping important people keep the city moving. He laughed bitterly. But really, I was protecting people from consequences. His eyes shifted toward Ethan. And nowhere was that more true than with my own son. For the first time all day, Ethan couldn't look him in the eye. The arrogance was gone. The excuses were gone. Only regret remained. But the most shocking revelation was still coming. The prosecutor lifted one final document, a financial audit, recently completed, freshly signed, and connected directly to the mayor's office. "What is that?" I asked. The prosecutor looked toward me. His expression was grim. "Your Honor, this doesn't stop at dismissed citations." The room became still. "Then what does it involve?" The prosecutor took a deep breath. "Public money." And suddenly, the traffic case that had started the morning became something far larger than anyone had imagined, something that could send multiple people to prison, including the mayor himself. Federal investigators arrive at the courthouse with evidence of missing city funds, and Ethan learns that the speeding ticket, which started everything, may have accidentally exposed a multi-million-dollar corruption scheme. The courtroom had already witnessed enough drama for a month, but the day wasn't finished, not even close. The prosecutor held the financial audit in his hands, flipping through pages marked with red tabs and highlighted figures. I could tell from his expression that whatever he was reading was serious, very serious. "Proceed," I instructed. He nodded. "Your Honor, this audit was completed 3 days ago as part of an ongoing review of municipal development projects." The room remained silent. Investigators initially believed they were examining accounting irregularities. He paused. Instead, they discovered nearly $8 million in city funds that cannot be properly accounted for. Gasps filled the gallery. Mayor Caldwell closed his eyes. He already knew where this was heading. The prosecutor continued. Several contracts were awarded to companies with direct ties to individuals listed in the Protected Review Program. A large monitor displayed a chart. Lines connected contractors, political donors, city officials, and shell companies. The network looked like a spider web, and nearly every thread led back to the mayor's office. Ethan stared at the screen. For the first time, his personal troubles seemed insignificant compared to the disaster unfolding around him. The prosecutor pointed to one highlighted company, Bright Horizon Development. Another, Urban Crest Consulting. Then another, Riverstone Holdings. All had received substantial city contracts, all shared common ownership connections, and all had benefited from unusual approval processes. The room erupted into whispers. Suddenly, the rear courtroom doors opened again. This time, no one needed an introduction. 3 individuals entered wearing dark suits and carrying federal credentials. The whispers instantly died. Federal investigators, they approached the prosecution table and handed over several sealed folders. The lead investigator spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Your Honor, we can confirm that a federal corruption inquiry has been active for the last 11 months. The statement hit like a hammer. 11 months. This investigation had been building long before Ethan's speeding incident." The prosecutor looked at the new evidence, then back at me. "It appears today's hearing accelerated events." The investigator nodded significantly. I glanced toward Ethan. His face had completely changed. The smug young man who walked into court that morning, believing himself untouchable, was gone. In his place sat a frightened 24-year-old, realizing his entire world had been built on a foundation of lies. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan stood. His attorney immediately grabbed his sleeve. "Sit down." But Ethan ignored him. "Dad." The mayor looked up. For a long moment, neither spoke. The room watched in silence. Finally, Ethan shook his head. "Was any of it real?" The question caught everyone off guard. The mayor looked confused. "What?" "The promotions, the opportunities, the internships, the contracts I got offered." His voice cracked. "Did I ever earn any of it?" No one moved. No one spoke. Because deep down, everyone understood what he was really asking. Had he ever succeeded on his own? Mayor Caldwell's shoulders slumped. He suddenly looked far older than he had that morning. I thought I was helping you. Ethan laughed bitterly, helping that word again. The same word powerful people often use when they're actually causing harm. You weren't helping me, Ethan said quietly. You were protecting me from reality. The silence that followed was painful, because everyone knew he was right. Every ticket erased, every consequence avoided, every shortcut provided. None of it had prepared him for the moment when the system finally stopped bending. The lead federal investigator stepped forward. Mayor Richard Caldwell. The entire courtroom froze. The investigator opened a folder. We have a warrant authorizing your immediate detention pending further investigation into corruption, abuse of office, conspiracy, and financial misconduct. The mayor didn't resist. He didn't argue. He didn't even look surprised, almost as if he'd known this day was coming. Slowly, he removed his city lapel pin, the symbol of his office, the symbol of his power. He stared at it for several seconds, then placed it on the table. The tiny metallic sound echoed through the silent courtroom. A career ending, a legacy collapsing, an empire falling, all at once. As investigators escorted him toward the exit, he stopped beside his son. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the mayor placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. I should have taught you responsibility. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Instead, I taught you immunity. Those were the last words he spoke before being led away. The courtroom remained silent long after the doors closed behind him, because everyone understood they had just witnessed something rare, not the fall of a politician, not the arrest of a powerful man, but the moment years of unchecked privilege finally met accountability. And for Ethan Caldwell, the hardest part was only beginning, because now he would have to discover who he was without his father's power standing in front of every consequence. And that journey would begin with the sentence waiting to be handed down. As the judge prepares Ethan's sentence, a surprising victim steps forward, someone whose life was permanently changed by one of the favors that helped protect the mayor's son for years. The courtroom remained unusually quiet. Mayor Richard Caldwell was gone. Federal investigators had left with boxes of evidence. Reporters were already filing headlines that would dominate every news broadcast by evening. Yet one matter remained unfinished. Ethan Caldwell's sentencing. I reviewed the documents in front of me. The reckless driving charge, the threats toward Officer Torres, the repeated abuse of influence, the pattern of entitlement. It was more than enough to justify serious consequences. But before I could speak, a voice came from the gallery. Your Honor. An elderly man slowly rose from the back row. The room turned toward him. His suit was old but neatly pressed. His hands trembled slightly. There was something familiar about him. The prosecutor immediately recognized him. Mr. Parker? The man nodded. May I address the court? I allowed it. He approached the witness, stand carefully, and took the oath. Then he looked directly at Ethan, not with anger, not with hatred, but with disappointment, the kind that cuts deeper than either. My name is Daniel Parker. Ethan looked confused. He clearly didn't recognize him. Mr. Parker smiled sadly. I didn't think you would. The room listened. 3 years ago, my daughter applied for a city engineering position. He paused. She was the most qualified applicant. The prosecutor already knew where this was going. Unfortunately, so did I. Mr. Parker continued. She finished first in every evaluation. His voice grew heavier. Then the position suddenly disappeared. The courtroom became silent again. A week later, the job was awarded through a special recommendation process. His eyes shifted toward Ethan. To you, Ethan froze. What? Mr. Parker nodded. My daughter spent years preparing for that opportunity. His voice cracked slightly. When she lost it, she left the city. The room remained motionless. She believed she wasn't good enough. A painful silence followed because everyone understood the truth. She hadn't lost because she lacked ability. She had lost because someone else had connections. Ethan looked stunned. I didn't know. For once, nobody thought he was lying. because that was the real tragedy. People raised with privilege often never see the doors quietly opening in front of them. They only notice when a door finally closes. Mr. Parker nodded slowly. I know you didn't. Then he delivered the sentence that seemed to hit Ethan harder than anything else that day. That's what makes it dangerous. The room fell silent. Mr. Parker returned to his seat. No applause, no dramatic reaction, just truth. And sometimes truth weighs more than punishment. I looked toward Ethan. The arrogance that had entered my courtroom that morning was completely gone. In its place sat a young man finally confronting the consequences of a life built on favors. Not just for himself, for everyone affected by those favors. I picked up my sentencing order. Mr. Caldwell. He stood immediately. No hesitation, no attitude, no excuses. I have listened to the testimony presented today. My voice echoed through the chamber. You endangered lives in a school zone. I signed the first page. You attempted to use influence to avoid accountability. I signed the second. You demonstrated contempt for public servants performing their duties. I signed the third. Then I looked directly at him. But the most serious offense revealed here was not your speed. The room listened carefully. It was your belief that consequences belong to other people. Ethan lowered his head. I continued. For reckless driving, abuse of authority, and related violations, this court imposes a 1-year suspension of driving privileges, a substantial financial penalty, and 30 days in county custody. No reaction, no protest. He simply listened. Additionally, you will complete 500 hours of public service. His head lifted slightly. Not administrative work. I shook my head. You will work directly with community outreach programs, road safety campaigns, and scholarship initiatives for students pursuing public service careers. For the first time all day, Ethan spoke. Yes, Your Honor. Not because he wanted to, because he finally understood. I set down my pen. The case was over, yet before the bailiff escorted him away, Ethan turned toward the gallery. Toward Mr. Parker, the elderly man looked back. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Ethan did something nobody expected. He apologized. Not the polished apology written by attorneys, not the carefully crafted statement of a politician. A real apology, civil, awkward, honest. Mr. Parker said nothing. But he nodded, and somehow that meant more. The bailiff escorted Ethan toward the exit. The same young man who had entered believing his last name could solve every problem now walked out carrying something far heavier than a criminal sentence: responsibility. The courtroom doors closed behind him. The sound echoed through the chamber, not as a symbol of defeat, but as the beginning of accountability. I gathered the remaining files and prepared for the next case. Outside, the city continued moving. Traffic flowed, schools remained open, citizens went about their lives. But something had changed, not because a mayor had fallen, not because a scandal had been exposed, but because, for one day at least, the rules had applied equally to everyone. And that is where justice truly begins, not when the powerful win, not when the powerful lose, but when power no longer matters.